Welcome back to the Broad Street Sports Podcast featuring Zachary Chaby, and today I'm going to give you an overview of what I've missed during the NBA playoffs and the NHL playoffs and give you my thoughts and early predictions for the conference finals in both sports. So we're going to start off with the NBA here. I know I've missed a lot. I've just been busy and haven't been able to get on and record a podcast, but moving on besides that, we got Game 1 tonight of the Western Conference Finals between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Thunder recently just beat the Nuggets in Game 7 very convincingly to move on to this game to now host Anthony Edwards and the Timberwolves in Game 1. Overall, that Thunder series, it was a great series. It went just how I predicted. I had the Thunder winning in 7 games, and it went just like that. The Nuggets fought. The Nuggets were up 2-1 in this series, but then a huge win by OKC in Denver in Game 4 took this series back 2-2. OKC won Game 5, and then Denver responded with a great Game 6, but OKC played amazing in Game 7. Mark Daigneault's decision to put Alex Caruso on Nikola Jokic in this late first quarter, early second, changed the game. He was completely locking down Jokic, and Jalen Williams had a huge Game 7 after a bad Game 6. He had 18 points in the second quarter and responded to have, I think, about 25, 26. But the main star of the show, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, most likely the league MVP. I don't know why they haven't announced it yet, but that's besides the point. He finished with 35 points. Jokic, they took him out, and the Jokic minutes showed tremendously. They had no response for the Thunder once Jokic was taken out, and they completely dominated the paint with Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein. It was shown throughout. For the Minnesota Timberwolves, though, they've been dominating during this playoffs. A run Anthony Edwards has been on, just not this year, but the past 2 years. With some of the stars he's knocked out, it's absolutely insane. With LeBron, I know Curry was hurt, but Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker last year, and Nikola Jokic along with Jamal Murray as well. Anthony Edwards has been on a tear, and if I'm being honest with you, I thought this Timberwolves team last year was better than this year's team because they had the size and they had the athleticism. This team is even better in my opinion because they're getting the X factor of Julius Randle. When did you think Julius Randle was going to average 25 points last series against the Warriors? I didn't for sure. But just to be honest, the Timberwolves, they've looked like the best team in the playoffs so far. And they look like the team with no weaknesses in my opinion. I feel like all these other teams here in the conference finals have their own weaknesses. The Timberwolves, I don't see any weaknesses on them whatsoever. Anthony Edwards is the star player. He's the star of the show. They have great contributors with Dante DiVincenzo. They got Julius Randle. They got Rudy Gobert, who's been playing great on the defensive end and producing a little bit on the offensive end. They got Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They have guys all over the court ready to produce and ready to play, and that's the reason, even though they were the 6th seed, why they're in the conference finals back-to-back years now. And I'm really excited for that series. If I'm being honest with you, I'm really like the Timberwolves. My early thoughts right now is I do have the Timberwolves in 6, but we'll see how the series goes. I feel like that one's going to be exciting, going to be fun to watch. I'm excited to watch it tonight for sure. But overall, for the Timberwolves and the Thunder series, I'm excited for that. And they've both had the Timberwolves have just been dominating. The Thunder have had to battle a last round, not as much against the Grizzlies, obviously, but excited for that series and excited to see who can advance to the NBA Finals. Moving on to the East series, the Pacers and the Knicks. The Pacers are another team, like the Timberwolves, have been dominating the entire playoffs. Tyrese Halliburton completely destroyed Milwaukee, obviously. It was pretty much over after Damian Lillard tore his Achilles. The series was over, and I thought it was over before it even started. It was a snooze fest, in my opinion, and Indiana just straight dominated. And then the next series, Cleveland. I know Darius Garland didn't play, but Tyrese Halliburton looked like the superstar he is in today's league. And if I'm being honest with you, I'm not surprised. I mean, he kind of showed a glimpse of it last year against the New York Knicks, actually, and is playing even better now. And people like to say, oh, well, how come they're playing different this year than they did last year? Think about it. They have a full year of Pascal Siakam, and they have Bennedict Mathurin, and their team is just growing more as a whole. They got great playoff experience last year, getting to the Eastern Conference Finals. I know they didn't win a game against Boston, but still to get there with how young most of those guys were was great experience, and it's shown in these playoffs the way they've been playing, especially against Cleveland next round. In my honest opinion, I had Indiana early in the playoffs when I made my playoff predictions, winning the first round and then just losing to Cleveland pretty easily. But they dominate thanks to Tyrese Halliburton, thanks to Pascal Siakam, Aaron Nesmith, Andrew Nembhard, Miles Turner. They have a great starting 5, and the producers off the bench like TJ McConnell, like I said, Bennedict Mathurin, and they have a great winning head coach, Rick Carlisle, who won the championship back in 2011 with Dirk Nowitzki and the Dallas Mavericks. So he has that experience in the playoffs, and I feel like this is just a perfect mix of offense and defense. They play great basketball as a whole, and now going against the Knicks, who, even though these players weren't part of the early rivalry, they're still part of it, and it's time for them to write their part of the story for this rivalry, because they kind of showed it last year. It was a 7-game series where Indiana won, which was great. But for New York, they got Brunson, the clutch player of the year, like Kendrick Perkins likes to say, big body Brunson. He's a small guy, but he can get down in the paint and hit consistent buckets after buckets. And this team has it's great all over the court. They have great offense with him, Karl Anthony Towns, with Mikal Bridges, with Josh Hart. But Josh Hart is also good on the offense and defensive end. And Mikal Bridges, they really got a lot out of him last series, especially against the Celtics in the first 2 games in Boston. He finished both games in Boston with a great defensive play and produced good offense throughout the series. I know Karl Anthony Towns didn't do the best, but if he's on shooting, it's tough to stop him, and he's a great paint presence, and him and Jalen Brunson running the pick and roll has been great so far in the playoffs and throughout the regular season. And if I'm being honest with you, the way the Knicks were playing, especially against these top teams in the East and the West, I didn't view them much as contenders in the playoffs once it started. But I know Jason Tatum got hurt, but if you realistically think about it, Tatum didn't get hurt until the Knicks went up 3-1. The Celtics choked 2 games in Boston. They were up 20 points in both games, and they proceeded to choke not 1, but 2 games. And then Tatum, obviously, Tatum and the Celtics had a great game 3, and then they were on the heels of winning it, and the Knicks came back, and then Tatum tore his Achilles. But still, this was the series for the Celtics to win. The Knicks, I feel like, I don't know if this is hot take, that's how I feel at least. This was a series for the Celtics to lose more than it was a series for the Knicks to win last series, because I think the Celtics, they were the reigning NBA champions. They really didn't change their roster whatsoever, and they were firing on all cylinders. They had 60 wins, and they were the 2nd seed, but still, they looked like the championship team they were before and ready to carry that championship DNA back into the playoffs. And the Knicks, the Celtics choked down the stretch, especially what the Celtics did with the historic shooting percentage in Game 1. I think it was about 15% they shot from 3, which is it was 15 of 60, I believe, that they shot in Game 1, which is astronomically horrible in my opinion. Like, you can't shoot like that and expect to win games. I know that's your formula, shooting up threes and expecting them to go in. It just doesn't work. It won't work no matter what era of the NBA you in. You can't do that and expect to win, in my opinion. But overall, looking at this series, I'm excited for them to write another chapter into this rivalry story. It's going to be a great series. I feel like this one has more likely of going to 7 games than the other one, in my opinion. But looking at it right now, the Pacers can definitely win this series, don't get me wrong. But the Knicks, I just feel like this is their time to get to the finals. Not win the finals per se, but to get to the finals, in my opinion. I think they're just going to be able to neutralize Halliburton. They have that stopper in Mikal Bridges. They really didn't have that last year. I know they had DiVincenzo and Josh Hart was recovering, but I feel like Mikal Bridges is so vertical on how he plays the game, where he'll be able to cover Halliburton pretty well. And as long as they neutralize him, Siakam, and force some other guys to make shots, I feel like the Knicks can win this series. But it's going to be a tough one, and I do think it's going to go to 7 games early on, and I believe the Timberwolves and the Thunder series will go to 6 games, and I have the Timberwolves winning. And my early predictions for the finals, I had the Knicks and Timberwolves. This obviously could change as the series go on, but my early prediction coming out of the conference finals and winning the NBA finals, it's the Minnesota Timberwolves. Anthony Edwards is the future of this league. He doesn't want to say it, he doesn't want to be it, but we all know it. He's a superstar already, and he's carried the Timberwolves, a team that could barely make the playoffs for a while with Karl Anthony Towns, to back-to-back conference finals. He's a superstar and the possible future face of the league, and I think this is his moment to start that journey up to that trajectory, in my opinion. Moving on to the NHL, though, we also have the conference finals starting tonight with the Florida Panthers and the Carolina Hurricanes. The Florida Panthers just came off a grueling 7-game series, just like the Thunder did, but this one, it was another blowout. Both Game 7s on Sunday were absolute blowouts, and the Panthers just demolished the Toronto Maple Leafs, which I'm not surprised. We all know the Toronto Maple Leafs like to choke, and let's just talk about them real quick. 7 straight Game 7 losses is just absolutely insane. Like, how can you make the playoffs consistently, and not win one game? You've been to 7 straight games. You've been to 7 Game 7s and haven't won any of them. I guess it's just the Canada curse of hockey. We all call hockey Canada, or we all call Canadian hockey sport, but they haven't really won a championship in a while. But Toronto, they're consistently losing. They haven't made it to a conference final since 2002, so another year for them not making it, which I'm not surprised. And they got their own problems to worry about, in my opinion. But let's move on from that. The Carolina Hurricanes, they've looked great so far, beating the Washington Capitals last series. And I'm just going to talk to the Capitals real quick, specifically Ovechkin. We all know he got the record this year. A lot of people are probably putting him in the conversations of greatest of all time, and I definitely agree he should be in that conversation. It's just his career, except for that, has been really interesting. And looking at it, he's only made it past the second round once, and the one time he did it, he's made it to the Stanley Cup Finals, and he's been in the league for close to 20 years now. So he's obviously a Hall of Famer, possibly the greatest of all time. But that one ring, I feel like it's going to loom large in a lot of people's mind. But overall, looking at this series as a whole, the Panthers and Hurricanes, obviously the Florida Panthers are the reigning Stanley Cup champions, and they're right back in the conference finals. And with the Carolina Hurricanes, last year they choked against the Rangers. They really had a great roster, but just the Rangers had their number and were able to absolutely dominate them. But just looking at it as a whole, I like Florida in this series a lot. I think Florida, with that championship MO, they still got guys like Kachuk. They still got Barkov. They still have a lot of guys from this championship core, and they're playing great hockey as well. So that's really important. And it's not like it's a team like Florida, as long as they get into the dance, they're going to be a tough out to beat. And they showed Tampa really early that they're ready to play. They absolutely dominated them. And then, like I said, they battled with Toronto. But I honestly think Florida's championship MO and experience the past couple of years, they're going for their third straight Stanley Cup appearance at least. And I think they're going to get it against the Hurricanes in 6 games. Now, the next series, the Edmonton Oilers and the Dallas Stars. I'm really looking forward to this series. We obviously got Connor McDavid, one of the best players, and not the best player in the NHL right now. Obviously, he was able to carry Edmonton to the Stanley Cup final last year and had, in my opinion, one of the greatest, if not the greatest Stanley Cup final I watched last year. 3-0, down 3-0, coming back 3-3, and unfortunately losing in Game 7, 2-1. That was one of the greatest Stanley Cup finals I've ever watched. That's what you want, especially when you get to the Cup final. You want to see a great series, and that was a great series in my opinion. I'm looking at this series. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this was a rematch of last year's conference finals, but still the Oilers and the Stars. I'm really excited for this series. Like I said, the Dallas Stars, they obviously got players all over, especially Mikko Rantanen. I still can't believe Avalanche traded him. I still believe he leads the league playoffs and playoff goals. I think he has about 9 or 10, but still, he's been a great acquisition for them, and that I feel like he could be the guy to take it over the top for them. But I'll be honest with you, it's Connor McDavid. He's, like I said, if not the best, one of the best players in the NHL, and I feel like he's just going to be able to take them once again back to the Cup final, and that sets up another rematch. I know it's boring, but I just feel like it makes the most sense. I feel like it's going to happen. And between Florida and Edmonton, I don't want to see a Canadian team win, but I'll be honest with you, I think Connor McDavid's out for blood. I think early on, my prediction is that the Edmonton Oilers get back to the Stanley Cup final, face the Florida Panthers, and they get their get back from last year and win the Cup final. Other than that, that's going to wrap up today's episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. I might drop some reactions to the game ones tonight and the Phillies. Sorry I haven't been continue with that either. Like I said, I've been busy. But other than that, I'll talk to you guys later. Maybe expect an episode later in the week. Other than that, enjoy the games tonight and see you.